The first time Dr. Ethan Harper stepped into the morgue, the world outside seemed to vanish. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, casting a sterile, almost ghostly glow across the stainless steel tables. The scent of antiseptic mingled with the faint, metallic tang of cold bodies, and the quiet rhythm of distant monitors and murmured voices created an uneasy symphony. Every step echoed in the cavernous space, and for a moment Harper felt a chill, not from the temperature, but from the weight of what he was about to witness. It was his first day as a forensic doctor, and nothing could have prepared him for the sight that awaited him. A morgue assistant led him down the narrow corridor, stopping at one particular table. Harper's eyes fell on the body of James Keller, a man in his mid-40s, lying unnaturally still beneath the white sheet. At first glance, Harper saw only the pale skin and the clinical posture of the body, and then the assistant gently pulled back the sheet, revealing it. The marks. They weren't scratches or bruises in any ordinary sense. They were intricate, precise, almost geometric, etched into Keller's skin with an exactness that defied explanation. Harper's breath caught. His mind raced through every possibility: accident, assault, animal attack, surgical complication. None of them fit. Each mark was symmetrical, clean, and consistent, something no human hand, no known tool, no medical procedure could have produced. He leaned closer, eyes tracing the patterns that seemed to ripple across the man's chest and arms. Tiny, burn-like impressions forming shapes, almost like a secret code. The assistant whispered what little was known, but Harper barely heard. He was consumed by the impossible. Every forensic textbook he had studied, every autopsy he had observed, had prepared him for cases of trauma, disease, and sudden death, but nothing like this. Harper felt a twinge of fear and disbelief coiling in his chest. The human mind, trained to categorize and rationalize, faltered here. He was staring at something entirely outside the scope of reason, yet undeniably real. As he documented the marks, Harper's pen trembled slightly. Photographs were taken from every angle. Measurements were painstakingly recorded. Each click of the camera shutter sounded unnaturally loud in the hushed room, a reminder of the gravity of the moment. Colleagues murmured in low tones, their faces taut with the same mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Harper's eyes kept returning to the patterns. They seemed almost deliberate, intentional in a way that suggested design rather than accident. He couldn't shake the feeling that the body was communicating something through its injuries, a message in a language he did not understand. And then, everything changed. Harper realized that this first case was not merely another entry in his professional training. It was a confrontation with the unknown, a challenge to every assumption he had held about life, death, and the limits of human understanding. The morgue, once a place of scientific detachment, had transformed into a theater of mystery where every shadow seemed to hold a question that would not be answered easily. Harper stepped back, swallowing hard, aware that his first day as a forensic doctor had become the beginning of a journey into something far larger, far more inexplicable than he could have imagined. The fear was there, yes, but so was a quiet, unrelenting fascination. And somewhere deep inside, Harper knew that James Keller's story would haunt him forever. James Keller had lived a life that, on the surface, seemed ordinary. A devoted husband to Laura, a father to Emma, and a beloved high school history teacher in his small town, he was the kind of man everyone trusted. Neighbors recalled his gentle laugh and his willingness to stay late to help students struggling with assignments. Nothing in his life suggested that he would become the center of a medical enigma, and yet, in the months leading up to his death, subtle warning signs began to emerge. Signs that no one, not even James himself, could explain. It began with small, almost imperceptible marks on his skin. At first, he brushed them off as minor burns from cooking or irritation from new laundry detergent. But the marks persisted, appearing in different places each week, sometimes in patterns that seemed deliberate, almost like a design etched across his forearms or chest. Alongside these mysterious lesions came episodes of sudden fatigue, headaches that came without warning, and moments of disorientation that left him grasping for words. Friends noticed a subtle change in him, a quiet anxiety, a sense of worry that lingered beneath his usually calm demeanor. James visited his primary care physician repeatedly, seeking answers. Blood tests returned normal. Physical exams revealed nothing conclusive. The doctors, constrained by the limits of conventional medicine, suggested stress or sleep deprivation. "Perhaps you're overworking," they said. "Maybe it's nothing to worry about." But James knew it wasn't nothing. The marks burned with a strange sensation he couldn't describe, and the confusion that sometimes clouded his mind left him unsettled, as though reality itself had momentarily shifted. At home, Laura tried to comfort him, gently pressing her hand to his back as he described the strange sensations. Emma, their teenage daughter, watched with quiet concern, sensing her father's unease even when he tried to hide it. The camera lingers on these intimate moments. James, seated at the kitchen table, rubbing his arms, staring at the faint red patterns. Laura placing a hand on his shoulder. Emma quietly sketching in her notebook, her eyes reflecting worry and fear. These reenactments convey more than clinical facts. They show the human cost of a medical mystery, the way it seeps into every corner of a family's life, Even the marks themselves defied explanation. Some appeared like faint burn scars, others like punctures, yet none matched any known pattern of injury. Their depth, their placement, and their almost geometric regularity suggested a precision no ordinary accident could produce. Animated overlays demonstrate their peculiar angles and spacing, giving viewers a sense of just how unlike any conventional trauma these marks truly were. As Harper would later reflect, it was this combination, the untraceable injuries, the puzzling physical symptoms, and the gradual erosion of James's health, that made the case so haunting. Here was a man slipping quietly into tragedy, his body silently screaming a story no one could yet decipher. By the time James arrived at the hospital, the marks had multiplied, the fatigue had worsened, and his sense of reality seemed fragile. Doctors were left with questions they could not answer, while James' family grappled with an unseen threat that had grown beyond their understanding. In this quiet suffering, the first hints of a mystery began to crystallize, a puzzle that would challenge not only the limits of medical science, but the very nature of what it means to witness the unexplained. Dr. Ethan Harper approached James Keller's case with the meticulous focus of a scientist, yet beneath the surface, a creeping unease had begun to settle in. The morgue was quiet, almost reverent, as he donned his gloves and leaned over the body. Every detail mattered. The angle of a mark, the depth of an indentation, the subtle changes in skin tone that could reveal time and pressure. Harper's hands moved methodically, lifting, measuring, documenting, photographing, while his mind raced through every plausible explanation. Accident? Impossible. Animal attack? The precision of the marks eliminated that. Tool or weapon? Nothing known could have produced the symmetry he observed. The markings seemed deliberate, and that thought, unspoken, sent a shiver down his spine. He began the examination under magnification, peering through lenses that transformed the ordinary into something almost alien. The edges of the marks were unnervingly sharp, some curling slightly as though engraved by a hand trained in a discipline no human could claim. Harper scribbled notes furiously, flipping through his textbooks and journals, seeking precedent. Nurses and fellow pathologists hovered nearby, their faces a mixture of professional curiosity and quiet apprehension. Harper asked questions he didn't quite expect to hear answers to, their responses only adding to the tension. "I've never seen anything like this," murmured one technician. Another shook her head. "It's precise, too clean." The room itself seemed to close in, fluorescent lights reflecting off steel tables and instruments in a cold, metallic dance. Every sound was amplified. The click of the camera shutter, the rustle of paper, the subtle whir of the ventilation system. Harper's thoughts oscillated between scientific detachment and a human instinctive dread. He reminded himself of his training, the need to categorize, to rationalize, to ground himself in evidence. Yet the evidence itself defied categorization. Each pattern, each line on Keller's skin, demanded an explanation that medicine could not provide. Harper's pulse quickened as he considered possibilities at the edges of his understanding, ideas he could not yet articulate. He ran preliminary tests, chemical analyses, microscopic slides, skin biopsies. The results offered no clarity, only more questions. No toxins, no disease, no external agent. The marks were foreign and yet intimate, alien and yet human. As he documented each observation, Harper felt a tension building, a merging of professional rigor and personal fascination. The morgue, usually a space of controlled precision, had become a theater of the inexplicable. Cinematic shots linger on Harper's face, tense and reflective, juxtaposed with extreme close-ups of the marks themselves. The camera focuses on the intricate patterns, as if inviting the audience to wonder alongside him. He found himself returning to the same question over and over. How could a human body bear evidence of something no human hand had caused? Every rational explanation crumbled under the weight of the observation, leaving only a raw, unanswerable mystery. By the end of the day, Harper was exhausted, physically and mentally, yet he could not turn away. The case had shifted from a professional challenge to a personal obsession. Each mark seemed to whisper questions he could not yet comprehend, echoing in the silence of the morgue. Harper knew that this first encounter with James Keller's body was only the beginning, and that the answers he sought might lie in realms medicine had never explored. The tension, the unease, and the unrelenting curiosity would propel him into a deeper investigation, one that would test the limits of his training, his reason, and his courage. As the initial analysis yielded no answers, Dr. Ethan Harper realized that conventional medicine was powerless in this case. The morgue had offered him clues, yet those clues only deepened the mystery. Harper began reaching out beyond his immediate circle, contacting dermatologists, toxicologists, even biologists who specialized in rare, unexplained phenomena. Each consultation brought a new perspective, and each, in its own way, proved unsatisfying. The dermatologists examined photographs of the marks with frowns of disbelief. "Unidentifiable trauma," one said quietly, shaking her head. "No chemical residues, no biological agents, no infection." The toxicologist ran repeated analyses on tissue samples, his tone cautious but firm. "There's nothing here. Nothing we can measure. Nothing we can quantify." Harper felt a chill each time he hung up. As though the silence that followed each expert's verdict was more telling than their words, late nights in the lab became a ritual. Harper pored over files, cross-referencing obscure medical journals, dissecting every possible explanation with painstaking care. He lined up slides, photographs, and charts on the cold steel counters, organizing them into a map of impossibility. Shadows fell across the room as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the quiet tick of the clock seemed amplified, marking the slow passage of time in a place that felt suspended between the living and the dead. The camera lingers on Harper's tired face, lit by the sterile glow of a desk lamp, eyes scanning a microscope, brow furrowed in determination. The tension is palpable. Every lead seemed to dissolve into nothing, every theory crumbling under the weight of evidence, or lack thereof. In desperation, Harper allowed himself to explore avenues that felt almost forbidden. A researcher who studied anomalous biological phenomena suggested possibilities that defied conventional reasoning. Unexplained energy patterns, unknown physiological responses, even cases that hinted at interactions with the human body not yet recognized by science. Harper's instincts resisted, yet curiosity gnawed at him relentlessly. Could there be forces at work that he had never learned to measure, never trained to see? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. The toll was not just professional, but personal. Harper's colleagues began whispering about the obsession he had developed, some cautioning him against pursuing a case that might damage his credibility. But for Harper, turning away was impossible. Each unanswered question pressed against him like a pulse, a reminder that somewhere, in the middle of the inexplicable, lay the truth, whatever form it might take. The morgue, once a place of rational detachment, had become a chamber of reflection, where every silent corner seemed to echo the mystery of James Keller's body. Visuals intercut between Harper's relentless investigation and the shadows of the morgue, empty hallways and lingering images of the impossible marks. Each shot builds a sense of claustrophobia, of the mind stretching to contain what the body cannot explain. Harper reflects quietly, speaking in voiceover. The struggle is not just to solve a mystery, but to maintain the balance between rationality and wonder, between what can be measured and what must be felt. It is a delicate, precarious line. By the end of this search, Harper is left exhausted but not defeated. The conventional paths had failed, leaving only questions, echoing, persistent, and unyielding. The audience feels the weight of his journey, the tension of uncertainty, and the vulnerability of a scientist confronting the limits of human understanding. The case has become a mirror, reflecting not only the mysterious marks on James Keller's body, but also the fragility of human comprehension when faced with the unexplainable. Harper is caught between duty, curiosity, and the creeping realization that some answers may lie forever beyond reach. And yet, the pull of the unknown compels him forward, deeper into a mystery that refuses to release its secrets. Beyond the walls of the morgue, James Keller's absence left an echo that could be felt in every corner of his life. His wife, Laura, carried the weight of unanswered questions, moving through the motions of her daily routine with a quiet, persistent grief. The camera lingers on her in their dimly lit home, hands clasped over the kitchen table, eyes fixed on a photograph of James smiling at a school event. Their daughter Emma, a quiet and perceptive teenager, sketches in her notebook, each line capturing a piece of the tension and sorrow she cannot yet put into words. The loss was not only physical but existential, the kind that leaves a family questioning the nature of life itself. Harper reflects in voiceover on the human cost of medical mysteries, how the limits of science intersect with personal anguish. Laura recounts late-night moments of confusion and fear, watching James retreat from ordinary activities, struggling with symptoms no doctor could explain. Emma remembers the times she found him staring at his arms, tracing the marks he could neither understand nor describe. These intimate glimpses of daily life paint a portrait of suffering quietly endured, the slow erosion of a family's sense of safety and certainty. The audience feels the weight of each small, intimate moment, grief interwoven with disbelief, love interlaced with helplessness. The ripple effect extended beyond the family to the professional community. Colleagues of Harper whispered about the unusual nature of the case, some skeptical, some sympathetic. Administrators urged caution, hesitant to classify the death as anything other than undetermined for fear of professional backlash. Harper felt the tension keenly, a conflict between pursuing truth and maintaining credibility. Every decision carried consequences, every action measured against the silent judgment of peers. The moral complexity of forensic work is laid bare here. Truth and justice can clash with bureaucracy and caution, leaving those in pursuit of answers walking a precarious line. Cinematic visuals reinforce the emotional resonance. Slow pans of empty classrooms where James had once taught, a coat draped over a chair in a vacant home, the lingering quiet of spaces once filled with life. Each frame emphasizes absence, loss, and the persistent questions that hover in the air long after the body is gone. The audience is reminded that behind every unexplained medical anomaly are real people, caught in the tension between seeking understanding and grappling with grief. Through Harper's voiceover, the narrative emphasizes empathy over sensationalism. This is not a story of horror, but of human vulnerability. the intersection of mystery and emotion, and the profound impact of the unexplained on those left behind. The audience witnesses the quiet courage of a family navigating uncertainty and the ethical struggle of a doctor confronting limits he cannot yet transcend. In this section, the weight of human emotion is fully realized, setting the stage for the deeper exploration of theories and the boundaries of science that lie ahead. As the days turned into weeks, Dr. Ethan Harper found himself standing at the edge of what medicine could explain. The marks on James Keller's body had been analyzed, tested, and cross-referenced against every known injury, disease, and chemical agent. And yet, the truth remained elusive. Harper began to consider possibilities that stretched beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding. Could there be rare medical anomalies, conditions so obscure that textbooks had yet to record them? Could psychological factors manifest physically in ways science had yet to comprehend? Or, in the quiet moments of reflection, he allowed himself to consider the more improbable, unknown biological phenomena, patterns of energy and interaction within the human body that had never been measured, never studied. The documentary moves visually between sterile laboratories and dimly lit rooms where Harper pores over notes, photographs, and slides. Animated overlays illustrate theories. Layers of skin affected in strange ways, simulated injury patterns that seem purposeful yet inexplicable, microscopic views of tissue that resist rational explanation. Experts weigh in through interviews. Dermatologists emphasize the improbability of natural causes. Neurologists discuss rare systemic diseases. And biologists mention phenomena documented only in obscure case studies. Yet no explanation fully accounts for the precision, the symmetry, the haunting geometry of the marks. The audience feels the tension between science and mystery, the pull of curiosity against the weight of uncertainty. Harper's voiceover reflects on the precarious balance between skepticism and openness. His training as a forensic doctor demanded evidence, rigor, and rationality. Yet the patterns in Keller's injuries insisted on acknowledgement, on observation, on wonder. He recognized that to seek answers in this case required more than technique. It required humility, a willingness to accept that the world could hold phenomena beyond the current reach of human understanding. The camera lingers on Harper's hands, resting on a table scattered with photographs, his eyes distant and contemplative. There is awe in his silence, but also a subtle dread, the awareness that some truths might never be revealed. Cinematic elements emphasize contrast, the harsh, bright lights of laboratories juxtaposed against night skies and fog-laden streets outside, symbolizing the gap between human knowledge and the unknown. In these moments, the marks on Keller's body transform from mere physical injuries into a haunting symbol of the limits of perception. Each theory, no matter how carefully considered, falls short, leaving Harper and the audience with a sense of wonder and unease. The boundaries between life, death, and the mysteries that lie between them seem less certain, and the marks themselves take on a silent, almost enigmatic presence, lingering in the mind long after the images fade. In this section, the audience is invited to grapple with uncertainty alongside Harper. There is no neat resolution, no satisfying answer. Instead, the story explores the tension between what can be measured and what must be acknowledged as a profound mystery. Harper's reflections are contemplative, drawing viewers into a shared sense of curiosity, fear, and respect for the inexplicable. The marks, once merely physical, now occupy a space in the imagination, prompting questions about the nature of human life, the limits of medicine, and the possibility that some phenomena exist just beyond the edge of comprehension. By the end of this exploration, the audience is left suspended in wonder, confronted with the haunting reality that some mysteries may never yield to explanation, yet still demand attention, empathy, and relentless inquiry. Harper, standing in the dim glow of the lab, represents both the scientist and the human seeker, navigating the tension between certainty and the unknown, between reason and the inexplicable. Months had passed since Dr. Ethan Harper first encountered James Keller's body, yet the memory of those impossible marks lingered as vividly as the first day. Harper walked slowly through the cemetery, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the neatly kept grass. Each step felt heavy with reflection, not only on the case itself, but on the fragile, mysterious nature of life and death. He paused before James's grave, tracing the name etched into the stone, and felt a quiet, personal reckoning with the limits of science. Here lay a man whose story had defied explanation, whose body had whispered secrets no textbook could contain. Harper's voice broke the silence in a soft, contemplative narration. Some mysteries, he realized, are not meant to be solved, yet they demand our attention, our empathy, and our courage. In the quiet moments at the gravesite, Harper thought back to the first day in the morgue, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the cold steel tables, the precise, unexplainable marks. He recalled the fear, the disbelief, and the fascination that had gripped him, the way the ordinary had transformed into something extraordinary in the presence of the unknown. He thought of Laura and Emma, their lives disrupted by grief, their need for understanding that medicine could not fully provide. Harper reflected on the ethical weight of his profession, the balance between truth and compassion, the the responsibility to honor those who cannot speak for themselves, and the courage to confront what may never be understood. The narrative shifts seamlessly between memory and reflection, with cinematic visuals blending archival photographs of James's life, notes from the autopsy, and Harper's own handwritten observations. The audience sees the lingering presence of the case in Harper's life, the quiet tension between what he knows and what he cannot explain. In these moments, the story becomes as much about Harper's journey as it is about Keller's mysterious death, the transformation of a young doctor into someone who has glimpsed the edges of human understanding and returned, profoundly changed. Harper acknowledges the questions that remain unanswered, the precise origin of the marks, the forces that shaped them, and the subtle ways they defied logic. Yet he also recognizes that these questions carry their own significance. They remind us that medicine, while powerful, has limits, that human life is intricate, fragile, and sometimes incomprehensible, and that empathy, curiosity, and humility are as vital to a doctor's work as knowledge or skill. As he steps away from the gravesite, the camera follows, capturing the fading sunlight, Harper's contemplative silhouette, and the quiet stillness that speaks louder than words. The final narration lingers on the tension between understanding and mystery. The audience is left with a haunting question. What lies beyond the reach of our science, and how do we honor the lives caught in that space? Harper's voice fades with the light, leaving only the sense of human vulnerability and awe. Some stories end without closure, yet they endure, shaping the way we see life, death, and the unknown. In this lingering silence, James Keller's story lives on, not as an answer, but as a reminder that some mysteries are eternal, demanding our attention, our respect, and our reflection. The camera pans slowly to the open sky above the cemetery, and the haunting weight of the unexplained settles into the minds of the audience, lingering long after the final frame.